Welcome to Hey Listen, where we discuss faith, leadership, and the mission of the church. We're so glad you've joined us. Now to today's episode. What about finding truth through the things that we're watching? Fake news. I just saw a comical to me post on Facebook of a Major League ball player who just happened to rescue a little baby before he went out to play, and he was in uniform. And all of these, right place, right time type situation. Well, it was clearly AI, but our eyes we just assume it is truth. So where's the danger in all of this?
Yeah, the reality is that for up until now, I think that the robots, the computers, they weren't good enough that you could tell it was fake.
Right.
It's so good now that it's almost impossible to discern truth from reality. And especially a culture that, if you think about it, people have always been naive, but the level of naivete in the culture today to believe something that, you look at that and objectively you say, there's no way that happened. And yet people were taking it seriously. And it's much darker than that. Elections are being swayed one way or another with these deep fakes, I think they call them. And so the technology is to a point that we can truly be fooled. Yeah,
a picture's worth 1,000 words really doesn't hold a lot of meaning anymore, because you just don't know if those words are true.
Well, that's a great way to think about it, because we have two ways really as human beings that there's multiple ways we learn, but we learn a lot from pictures and we learn a lot from literacy. And obviously before literacy, when there were just oral cultures, people had to memorize vast amounts of information. So we know that the original Odyssey and Iliad would have been memorized word for word and passed down from generation to generation. That's just impossible for our minds to fathom today. And the reason why is because we were raised in the post-Gutenberg age where we have books. So for many years, our minds were crafted and shaped by what we read. But now we're a culture that's shaped more by what we see, the images we see. Now, before we were talking about some secular prophets from the 20th century, we talked about the Orwellian ideas, and we also talked about Huxley's visions of the future. There's another guy, and actually it is this guy who brought this whole idea of the Orwellian and Huxleyan views into my sphere. So Neil Postman is this guy's name. He was a professor at New York University in the 70s and 80s, a professor of communication arts, I think. And he was a prolific writer and thinker in the 80s. And he wrote this fascinating book that I highly recommend people to get. It's still in print, called Amusing Ourselves to Death. And we got it for our staff a while back, for our shepherding team anyway. And there's a 20th anniversary edition that was from 2005, I guess. But Postman, in a similar vein as Orwell and Huxley, he was a prophet. So here's the difference. The other two guys we talked about last time were really from the radio age and the beginning of television. Postman's writing at a time when television is at its heyday. You had the big sitcoms. Dallas, I think I think that's what it was called. I've seen some episodes. Who Shot JR? All that was that era. Okay. And incredible viewership on the networks. Okay, that was before you streamed and you could get, right now you think about it, we really watch a la carte. We watch exactly what we want.
Absolutely.
I remember, cable and then satellite, and you had to buy these huge packages, and that still happens, but it's rarer because people just get what they want. So Postman's writing way before the internet, but he's saying, look at what we're doing. We're no longer thinking and reading, but we're consuming news that looks more like entertainment than information. And he warned us all the way back in 1985 that instead of being serious people with serious thoughts, we were becoming buffoons and clowns that are easily led astray by what we would now call fake news. But for a long time, the networks had so much credibility that they could say something and it was true.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so when you have that kind of power, you have the power for the tail to wag the dog. You can make up something and it becomes a cultural phenomenon and it's completely disconnected from reality. So now fast forward from the postman age of the 1980s, and now we're looking at an age when network television, sitcoms were 22 minutes long. They take place over a 30-minute time period. So you have these little segments of 5 or 6 minutes. Well, TikTok and what we see in Facebook is now more like seconds.
Right.
Right? Maybe a
Right.
minute. So when you watch a video, most of the
Mhm.
time, it's less than a minute, right?
Right. Absolutely. And you can even, watch them on double speed.
Yeah.
If you don't even want to watch them, you do the same with podcasts, anything, but we even customize how quick we
How fast
watch.
do you listen to stuff?
1.5 speed.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. You and I, we get along for a reason. I'm
Yes.
1.7 on my Audible.
Okay. Yes.
I'm impatient and I can
Mhm.
listen that fast. When my kids get in the car, they're like, "What in the world are you listening?"
Yes.
They can't even keep
We've
up.
been listening to audiobook as a family. We traveled some this weekend,
Yeah.
and it is painfully slow for me.
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible.
But my
Yeah.
youngest needs it to be, she needs to be able to focus.
Well, let her know that my family all like it at regular speed as well. So you and I are outliers maybe in this regard, but it does show our impatience.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to just say I love Audible. I have 555 books.
Oh, wow.
And I've read most of them on my Audible. I listen to them when I run. I'm listening to them at the gym and when I'm driving. I can learn from that. I can listen and learn pretty well. So there's a good use of technology.
Mhm.
I know a lot of what we're doing
Mhm.
on this, it makes it sound like technology is
Sure.
all bad, but we want to
Yeah.
say, no, there are some good things.
Right. And I struggle to learn from just an audiobook. My preferred way is to listen to it while I'm reading it.
Right.
I like to be able to read along while it's being read to me,
Huh.
which is not always practical because you're often buying two pieces there. But if I can do that, that is like my optimal learning. But beside that, a video would be. So watching something.
Yeah.
But if I were to just listen to an audiobook, I'm going to retain very little of that.
Well, years ago, even in the Neil Postman age, someone you would ask, "Have you read that book?" Well, I've seen the movie.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's been a thing for a long time. And I can remember, Les Mis, for instance, if people like Broadway stuff, that's one of the most famous ones. And a lot of people have seen that, but very few people have read the book, have read, I think it's Hugo. And it's an incredible piece of literature that very few people have read. It's and I'm sorry, I know I'm going to make some people mad here, but I love the music of Les Mis and everything, but it's hard to really learn for me to learn when people are singing every line. And when you read the book, it's a masterpiece of redemption and how God can work through a person. And reading that book, and I will tell you, it has an interlude about Waterloo in the middle of it that will drive you nuts. It's like 50 pages. I don't know what he was thinking. But the book is, other than that's my critique of the book. It's a fantastic book. But nobody's reading that because you can just go watch. There's multiple screen adaptations of that. You can go to Broadway and it really, the music is just gorgeous. It's wonderful. But I am kind of concerned that unless it's amusing me, to use Postman's language, unless I'm amused by it, I'm not interested in it. Even the news. So think about Fox and CNN. Okay, I don't watch Fox and I don't watch CNN, but when I'm at other people's houses, sometimes it's on. Okay, and I'll watch it for a minute and I'll say, okay, that has nothing to do with the news. It's just like, it's pure entertainment. They're making fun of the people they don't like. Everybody's got the $1 million look. It's about a look. It's about a soundbite. It's about being funny. It's not informational.
No, or celebrities.
Oh, yeah.
It's just full of people.
Or fluff, total fluff.
Yes.
Very few people right now. I mean, we're recording this in May of 2025. Very few people realize that there is a major war about to happen in India, between India and Pakistan. Did you know this?
I did not.
So the only reason I was made aware of it is because I read the BBC every day, and they actually talk about things that happen in the world other than celebrity things that happen in Hollywood. And another reason I know is because I have a dear friend who lives in India, just moved there recently, and he was telling me the political background of this. If I didn't have friends that lived in India, I wouldn't know because I'm an American. And that is death and disaster on the other side of the world. Nobody wants to hear that in America. Nobody. They want to be entertained.
Mm-hmm.
So what that does is, if we think about what technology is doing to us, it's not only causing us to be not very serious about the world, we're ignorant about things that could deeply impact our lives. And so what has happened is that we have allowed ourselves we've allowed the digital world to be our world to such an extent that we no longer know anything about the world. It would be interesting. We think about kids and what they may not have been exposed to from history and things. I'm always shocked at just how blind the average adult is to just what's happening in the world today. Now, I will say, when you travel overseas, I found this interesting. When I was in Italy 10 plus years ago, it was however long it was when Trump ran the first time. They knew more. It was during the primaries. They knew more about the people running for the American presidency than I did.
Interesting.
And they were predicting, when Trump won the first time, that he was going to be the Republican candidate. And I thought they were crazy.
Huh.
And they were right.
Yeah.
And that was in February before the November. So who in America knows anything about the prime minister? It's a female. She's a conservative. I know that much. I can't think of her name. But who knows anything about what's going on in the world today, or who the prime minister of England is? Everybody knows Putin because he's causing trouble all the time, right? But beyond that, what do we know?
Sure.
So that is, again, a product of technology taking over our lives. And it's not just about dumbing down, it's about distractions. And those distractions are not just in terms of the facts, but you've seen it, right? Like at church, a kid is getting a little antsy. What does mom and dad do?
Well, I hope they're not, but we know they are. They're letting them have a tablet or, look at their phone. I remember when my oldest was probably kindergarten or first grade, I had brought my Bible to church with us after using my iPad for several weeks. And he asked me, "Why do you have your Bible today?" And I was, it like really stung. I'm a kids minister. Of course, we use the real Bible. But he, all that time, had assumed I was just on a device, not using the Bible, even if that's what I was using it for.
I got to tell you a funny thing, though. I have people all the time tell me, I've got my Bible on my phone, Pastor. I promise you, I'm not.
Yes, we're taking pictures of the screen so we can remember it. Right. Absolutely. Yes.
They're always doing that. And so, there's a sense in which people of a certain age, I think, feel guilty about it. And yet we want to pause again and say, listen, we know that the Bible app is a wonderful thing. It's not all bad. And yet you and I were talking. The Bible app has searching capabilities that our kids can use to get around.
To get into a web browser.
And get around restrictions we put on their phones.
Yeah.
My wife and I, working with a kid one time, we were trying to keep them away from getting on, YouTube all the time and all that kind of thing. And they found a way through Google Translate, a back door.
They're going to figure it out.
So we need to understand it's not all bad, and yet the enemy can still use these things. And one of the things we're learning is that so many of our people today in the church have jumped into this augmented reality so much that it's becoming their reality. And some scholars are talking about this and how we're trading away family time. We're not enjoying one another anymore because we've allowed ourselves to be just drawn into this fake world. So I want to get the quote right. So I'm going to just read it here. A thinker called Max Frisch, and I got this out of a commentary on Malachi because we're going through Malachi. He says this. It was in a commentary by Peter Adam, but nonetheless, this is Max's words. He says, technology is the knack of arranging the world so that we don't have to experience it. So that is a profound little sentence there, that if we're using technology as an escape, we know sometimes our kids, even adults, like for instance, they'll have a hobby or something so that they just kind of check out.
Sure.
Right? Now we have the ability to do that every second of the day.
Right.
with our phones.
Mm-hmm.
So he gives this great little illustration of how dangerous it can be and how twisted it can make our minds. And he says, imagine this. Imagine a man walking up to a woman on the sidewalk who's pushing a baby stroller. And he says to the young mom, he says, what a beautiful baby you have there. That's a beautiful baby girl. The mom replies and says, you think that's something? Here, let me show you the pictures on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea there, and I know that's a little bit of a ridiculous analogy, but it maybe not.
Absolutely. How often are we watching the events of our kids' lives through a phone? Because we don't want to miss it.
Right.
While we miss it. We want to capture it so we can look at it forever, but we don't. I do. I love going back and hearing my sweet little kids' voices and those memories. But how often do we miss what's happening in front of us because we're trying not to miss it?
Absolutely.
We're just looking through a screen.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes the pictures and the videos and all of those things that we do as parents realize we want to hold on to those things. But once again, as long as that phone is in our hands, it's hard to hug our children.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to hold our wife's hands as long as we're holding a phone.
Mm-hmm.
Think of all the ways, and I know this sounds so crazy, but if we're thinking in terms of just pure tactile, just what we hold and touch and feel, so much of our lives, we're holding a cold piece of glass and steel.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no longer flesh and blood.
Right.
We're not holding a hand. We're not hugging our children. And so this is a serious issue. Another person, Iris Murdoch, she says, we live in a fantasy world, a world of illusions. She says the great task in life is to find reality. And so I think the church needs to think on those terms, to say, look, reality, your relationship with your spouse, with your children, and more importantly, most important of all, with Jesus, is a real relationship. The whole idea of Jesus coming to earth is that he took on flesh and came among us. And yes, we can hear sermons, and we'll talk more about this, sermons and music that we can get online. But there's just something about being with the body of Christ. It's even the image of the body of Christ is a physical metaphor. And yet so much of what we're doing is disconnected from physicality. It's all on our phones. Mm-hmm. So now we have churches that we can, especially since COVID, more and more people, they can just tune in online. And once again, it's a screen instead of flesh and blood. Mm-hmm. And so Postman, I think he would say, I told you so. Mm-hmm. And I think he would be terrified because as great as his warnings were about technology and about entertainment, he couldn't have imagined how seriously bad it's become. And as we continue the conversation in these next few episodes, we will start moving more in the direction of trying to find some good uses for technology. But we need to continue to just highlight these pitfalls. And I want to say one more time, we need to make sure that even if we're using technology, we're helping our kids see that difficult issues, we can understand them and then make good choices only when they're in context. And that takes more than a minute.
Right.
It takes more than even a couple of minutes of a podcaster commenting on the news or something like that. We need to teach our kids about the need to study a little bit and to learn things and to be informed and to not necessarily, even if it's somebody that we tend to trust in a podcast or something like that, we need to understand that those are fallible people and sometimes their agendas are very different than ours. And so that we circle back and we're going to end here on this notion of beware of fake news and realize your phone is one of the most dangerous tools for falsehoods.
Absolutely. And I think back to Bible school last summer, Breaker Rock Beach, but it was all about helping kids know what the truth is. And if we're not starting there, they are going to get sucked in to all of those pitfalls. So I'm excited to keep this conversation going. Thank you again for joining us today. We'll see you next time on Hey Listen.